Welcome to Prerona Television Canada on behalf of Global Academy of Holistic Leadership and Coaching. I would like to welcome you for this session. Today, we are very happy that we are having a leadership speaker series, and today is our 32nd episode. And our topic today is leadership and ethics revisited. And we are very glad that our regular speaker, Advocate Jiaur Rahman, is with us. He is the CEO of IITM and uh, adjunct faculty of IUB. Uh, Thank you for joining with us, and I would like to invite you to start your presentation. Thank you very much. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I think, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Good evening in Canada and good morning in Bangladesh and rest of the world. Great pleasure to be back here with the series. Today is our 32nd series on the topic of leadership and ethics. And today we had covered slightly on ethics previously, and today we are going back with some additional input as to how a leader has to work through a proper ethical mindset and mind frame, and that is how he or she actually develops himself to the next level. Um, at the end of the day, we must say that if you are a good leader, you have to be ethical at the same time. You can't be a good leader without being ethical. So let us start the presentation. Normally, I start off with a set of quotations. Uh, Today's quote is by Linda Fisher Thornton. Um, it says, positive leaders stay grounded in ethical values and use a human growth mindset. They are fixed and flexible at the same time, never straying from ethics, but always willing to change with the times. Uh, this this whole construct of a good leader actually sits squarely on the value system that society has evolved. So, if you are really thinking of leading in society or in business or in your profession, you have to have that mindset that these values are connected with your growth as an organization, as a human being. Ethical values will actually drive the enterprise forward. It will bring the reputation for the organization and for you as well. So you have to be very flexible at certain times, but also very fixed at certain times. When are you going to be flexible? When there is an opportunity for growth without letting go of your values, without letting go of your ethical standards. Then you can be flexible and introduce new ideas, a new perspective, new products, and new services. However, at certain times you have to be very inflexible. And when are you going to be inflexible? When your values are being uh, tested, when you know that what you're trying to offer is not ethical or does not comply with certain standards. At that point, as a professional, as a business person, as a leader, then your value judgment has to kick in, and at that point you have to be very very inflexible. So as a good leader, you have to balance your thought process between being extremely flexible at certain times when there is no issue of ethical standards marginalization, and at certain times you can be totally inflexible when you know that certain things are not going right and what you're offering as a product or services do not comply with the standards, are not following the measures that ought to be included in the product or service. In that case, you have to be inflexible and ensure that your product goes back to its original standard or adds more structure so that the society is not hurt, your stakeholders are not hurt. And you can never stray from this ethics, and you have to be always willing to change with times. When we are talking about changing with times, we are not changing with time in regards to the ethical standards. What we are saying that we are changing with times with regards to, let's say, business process, certain ways of doing business, etc. But ethics is very sticky. It's like the universal truth. Even 1,000 years from today, the set of universal truths will always be there, uh, come what may. Uh, People might be extremely technically competent 1,000 years from today, but certain standards will always remain. For example, the universal standards of being truthful, the universal standards of being ethical, universal standards of being upright, and also to speak the right thing, being righteous. These are universal standards, and it's embedded in all religions of the world. So if you want to be a good leader, if you want to take in the idea from the spiritual domain, you will also see that it's very sticky. Good leaders, even good prophets of the past, had been very, very strong in their philosophy, in the way they used to run their activities. So these are very important tools for a successful leader. So Linda Fisher Thornton had come up with this beautiful quote, and I thought of sharing with you. The next quote is by Jack Ma. And as you already know, Jack Ma is the chairman or CEO of Alibaba and one of the richest men in the world, probably the richest man in China. And he had gone through a lot of troubles and tribulations. However, he always took to being fair with his business. And if you look at the policies that his businesses has, they are grounded with standards and compliance and rules and regulations. So they are hitting on the issue of ethics all the time. So here is a quotation by Jack Ma. It says, "Never deceive others in business or in life. In 1995, I was deceived by four companies that are now closed. A company cannot go far by deceit." So the message from this quotation is that if you are deceitful, there is extreme possibility of you going under, you closing down as an organization or as a person. You will not be trusted by anyone. Trust level is so vital. So if you're being deceitful, if you're cheating people, if you're being untruthful, if you're not selling the true story, if you're packaging lies and deception in your products and services or the way you present yourself, and you know that you're being smart aleck, it will not work. What you have to offer is what you have. What you have to offer is what people will find out eventually. So it's best to share what is it with the product right now. So you have to be careful as to not oversell any product or service. As a leader, we have to communicate a lot. We have to sell our ideas. We have to sell our vision to the people. So that is important. But if you are overstretching and you know at the back of your mind that what you're saying will ultimately not pan out, there is almost no possibility of what you're saying happening, because you know some of the elements that are needed in the design of your future state, the design that you're trying to communicate to the others is not there. Then you're actually cheating people. You're selling stories to people, and they will not be happy at the end, because they might have set a belief on you. They might have they might have committed their soul to you, in the sense that here is a leader and I want to follow this leader, and what he or she says is almost like Bible. But when you are telling something which is not going to take place, and you know it very well, there is no possibility of that happening, then you are actually still selling a cock and bull story. So that's not fair. So follow Jack Ma, and here he's talking about all the other companies failing. And you know what Alibaba did? It's one of the richest company, one of the biggest company in the world. So he 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 walked in the line of fairness, justice, and truth, whereas the others did not. The others expired. and he went from being a reasonable company to being a very large company, and now an extraordinary famous company in the world. So we have to follow the path of righteousness, follow what is fair and truthful and what is principally right. And that's very important. You cannot cut corners in life. If you're cutting corners as a human being, be it in your business or any other field, people will realize that you are actually not fair at one given time, and you will slip. There is a saying in English that if you are lying to someone once, then you will have to have 10 other lies to cover up your one lie. So, my point to all of us, to everyone who's listening, is that why begin with that one lie? Why not be fair? Take the bullet first, and be open. Speak out the truth, and then all subsequent issues will be much easier. Whereas if you try to hide something, then all the other bullets will be coming in your direction, and then you will not have any place to hide. So that's very important. Moving to the next quote, my third quote. This is by Azim Premji, another big entrepreneur from this part of the world, and also a billionaire by his own standards. He's an IT billionaire from India. So he writes, he says, the real threat to business is from within, from poor ethical standards and lack of integrity that can do incalculable harm. History has proven repeatedly that business ethics, shared value, and corporate governance determine longevity of an enterprise. He has spoken from the viewpoint of an enterprise, but this is true for every single organization. It is true for social, political organization as well. So the whole point, the beauty of this statement is that he has pinned all hope on being having integrity in your communication, integrity and following ethical standards in all the actions that you do. And if you don't do what he's saying, that it can create incalculable harm. That means the harm cannot be calculated. It can be a very large harm which you did not even fathom, you did not even realize. It's truly a important statement. For example, you had a good relationship with someone, and you had never lied to that person for a very long time. Let's say 10 years, the relationship is going, and you have a very warm relationship. One fine day, for some crazy reason, you lied to that person, and subsequently that person finds out that you were not telling the truth. Imagine the 10 years of your warm and cordial and trustful relation. What will happen to that? That will be chucked out the window in the span of the next 30 seconds. So, being dishonest can devastate uh, your association with your friends and others and people with whom you do business. So, the 10 years of trusted relationship can be completely crushed, erased by one particular lie. So why take that risk? So that is why Azim Premji is talking about the incalculable harm. And I just gave you the example. And history has proven that business ethics, value system, and proper governance determine the longevity of enterprise. And if you just connect back with the previous quotation of Jack Ma, that kind of uh, seals the statement. His company, Alibaba, continues to live on, whereas the company which followed deceit is no longer there. We're talking about four companies following deceit are no longer there. And if you look at all the global enterprises, if you see how they are organizing themselves, how they are running themselves, you will see strict code of conduct, you will see strict principles. And if you know that sometimes when they move away from these strict code of principles and they're found guilty, what happens to them? You notice that some of these major corporations brand goes through the brand value goes down tremendously. For example, if you look at Siemens a few years back, we came to know through global media that it had bribed certain people globally to get some contracts, and they were making good profit. And all of a sudden, when the news hit the press, the share market value of Siemens went down. Even people in Bangladesh, where Siemens is a very respected name, people started to look down upon Siemens for a reasonable period of time. So imagine the context. You are no longer the world's greatest medical equipment supplier company. Your values has just been crushed by one or two misdeeds. So that is the issue of not being fair, and your reputation is at stake at every given moment. So as a corporate, as a professional, as a CEO or a leader of your house, if you can stick to your value system, if you can stick to a standard code of ethics, then you are safeguarded from the pitfalls of the the pitfalls that can grip you and destroy your reputation as a company or as an individual. So you have to be careful all the way throughout your career and develop certain standards that you will follow every single time in every single engagement, and that's how you truly transform yourself into a leader. So moving to the next slide, we come back to the topic of leadership, because the topic is on leadership and ethics. And uh, here is a uh, definition of leadership from the angle of ethics. So, leadership is the ability to move with ethical values even when confronted with an opportunity to cut corners when no one is watching. So, the crucial point here is when no one is watching, you continue to do the right thing, and that is proper leadership that is grounded on ethical standards. So no one is watching. You didn't cut corners. You went through the procedure, went through the system, and you came up with uh, the outcome that you painstakingly took onto yourself. You were not clever, and you were not extra clever. I would not say clever. You were not wicked in your design of activities. You were fair. You demonstrated the standards that needs to be undertaken in the design of your product or service, and then you introduce this product into the market. So the product becomes sturdy, the process becomes sturdy, and what you have at the end is a good product or good service, and it has a very strong potential value for the society. And that's when you are actually becoming a true leader. So a true leader is always following the ethical standards all throughout his or her career. It's like a Siamese twin. You want to be leading in society, then you be a true leader in the sense of ethical standards. You have to be always focusing on the ethics and value system, principles, and morality of the marketplace, of the society in which you are operating. And also, I want to say that there are certain universal standards that you must follow in the design of your products and services, or in the communication that you come up with for your stakeholders. Moving on, here we have three issues combined together. We are talking about leadership, talking about discipline and values. These are intertwined. They're embedded into each other. They move in sync. So you can't say that I want to be a leader, but I don't want to be disciplined. You can't say I want to be a leader, I don't need values, or vice versa. So these are intertwined and interconnected, and one sits on top of the other. You can't extricate one and say that these are three separate boxes and you can choose two. No, it's not going to work that way. When you're working with being a professional and a true leader in your own right, you need to blend these three together. So you have to embed discipline. You have to embed discipline in your work ethics. You have to embed discipline in the products and services that you bring out to this world. Then you have to be branding yourself, your from an ethical point of view on values. That means this organization is grounded on values. Its reputation is grounded on good ethical standards. So the brand will escalate, the brand value will escalate based on the premise that the organization is not going to compromise on values. So the values are integral to this organization, and none of its products and services will counter this value system. So at the end, anybody buying their products and services will not be cheated. So if there is a product failure that can take place, the company will always come to the rescue of the consumer. So that is ethical branding from the organizational point of view, and it's not just in terms of the products. The ethical branding will be in terms of the values that you position within your organizational setup, within the framework of your organizational culture. If you are fair, if you're justice driven, just policies will be implemented in your organization. You will have policies which are friendly towards your employees as well. It will not be obstruction. It will not create any kind of unfair obstruction to the welfare of society and to the welfare of the employees. And the employer employee engagement will be sweet, dynamic, and functional. So that would be a very important ethical branding based on values. For example, if your organization is quote unquote a good organization, but you're always cheating your employees when they are exiting from their work, you're trying to give them as less possible as and not paying them on time. That would be an ethical failure. That would be a very big ethical failure. So as a professional, we have to be careful as to how we engage our employees, people with whom you work. You have to be very fair and careful and give them what you have committed them ahead of time. So these are so vital an issue in becoming a leader. If you think that these are not important, then you are doing something wrong. So what you need to do is start realizing that all these little things matter in the design of the organization, in the design of your future self as a leader. So ethical branding is absolutely necessary in all the affairs of the business and the operation that your organization is running. The next point I have already covered, promoting fairness. If you are principled and promoting fairness culture within your organization, you have to ask yourself, am I doing this thing in the principle of fairness? Is it fair? Is it truthful, etc.? For example, I'm a Rotarian, and we have the four-way test where we talk about the fairness principle. Is it fair? Am I doing the things right, etc.? So very, very important. Then comes the culture of organizational responsibility. Every person should be responsible for the activities that he or she is responsible for. You can't be passing the buck. You can't be creating a leadership culture, a culture based on discipline and values, when nobody is taking responsibility for a particular activity. So you have to create a culture of organizational connect, in the sense that every activity has a champion who's dealing with this activity. So if the activity goes wrong, somebody has to take responsibility. You can't be passing the buck. You can't say that I don't know how this happened. It's probably somebody else's doing. It's not my doing. No, then you're not creating a leadership culture. Every person has to take the onus of responsibility for all the actions and attributes and elements that takes place in this organization. So you have to be a map. You have to map the enterprise's activities vis-a-vis the leadership, with vis-a-vis the person who are leading those activities. So that's responsible organizational culture, and and that is part of your discipline process. The discipline process will entail that things are structured, things are meaningful, things are connected with a particular person who is responsible for the ultimately for the outcome of through this engagement, etc. And last but not the least, leading by example. A leader is always leading by example. If you're preaching certain things to your team members, then you must be following through it as well. You must be feeling that you must be thinking or having the spirit that what you're preaching you will follow. So if you're telling your employees to be very very abstemious and careful and frugal in the current COVID-19 invested world, then you have to be very frugal yourself. You can't be going on a lavish expensive vacations and taking expensive tours using company jet and traveling while you're preaching frugality in this period of extreme economic deprivation and due to medical issues, etc. You can't be doing any of that. You have to maintain your standards in line with what you are pitching to your team members, pitching to the rest of the world. So you have to lead by example. If you're talking about everybody to follow a certain code of ethics and you're not even connected to the code of ethics, you're you're actually breaking the rule left and right, but you don't feel that anybody is going to challenge you because you're sitting at the top of the organization, then it's not going to work. So, for example, if you're the leader of, let's say, an enterprise, a massive enterprise that is owned by the state. For example, you're the owner, not the owner, you're the head of of a particular army in any country of the world. Let's say you have to follow certain standards as the head of that army of that particular government. If you're not following through those ranks, then you are actually doing misdeed for your country. You're doing something absolutely wrong. You have been given the responsibility to act in a particular way for the welfare of your state. And being at your position, you're totally stepping out of your responsibility and doing other things. So as the head of an organization, specifically where national security is involved, you have to be very, very careful as not to engage in any activity where you can be questionable. So that is hurting the reputation of the country as well. And in these cases, you ought not to lead at all. You should actually step down. So as a CEO of any enterprise, if you're not following your rank, if you're not following the principle of fairness and justice while you're holding that good office, then you should leave. We noticed that in the United States, President uh, Trump, ex-President Trump, had almost gone through a few rounds of impeachment. Why? Because people thought, the Senate thought, the rest of the America thought, and the world thought that he had actually overstepped his boundaries as the president, and the process of impeachment had actually started, I think, three times in the United States. So, as a leader, you should not be in that kind of situation where you're almost like you're almost drowning. So a leader should set examples by being fair, being truthful, absolutely driven by ethics, and there should be no moral turpitude while you're in office. Once you're away from your office, you can do many different businesses, no problem. You can do a shady business if you wish. Of course, you should not do at all, but being in office in a very coveted position, you are not to engage in any of those activities. And that is very hurtful for the organization and for the nation as well. Imagine a major CEO, for example, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. Imagine if he's found guilty of some bad things. How will that impact that major organization, Amazon? It will be a crushing blow to that organization. So, what we have to focus on is being truthful and driven by rule of law as a leader. And this discipline has to be ensured all across all the departments, all the bodies that the organization is connected with, even with regards to its suppliers. You have to maintain the standard code of business with the supplier. If the suppliers are being oppressive with their employees, and if you're getting a sweet deal in terms of pricing, and you're giving a blind eye to their activity, then it's not fair. And in the 1987-89 period, Nike was bombasted by the global media because they were using child labor in Indonesia and other parts of the world, and it was found out, and that was absolutely a wrong structure that they were following. They were actually squeezing the pace pay scale to those companies which were actually developing their shoes in Indonesia, and they were giving a blind, they were not casting any view as to how they were making those shoes. They were using child labor, which is not at all fair from the point of view of any national labor policy. But Nike did not care at that point. They had to give a lot of they were penalized for it, and their global reputation actually uh, tanked. So you don't want to be in that kind of situation. So as a leader, discipline, values, and ethics are integral, and a successful leader will always be keeping these three things intact in his or her activities, and ensuring that these three things are rolled out in the enterprises in which he or she works. So moving on to the next slide, ethics and brand reputation. We had actually covered part of it, so I will not go into detail. But what I would like to say is, when we are driving an organization, we have to have a moral compass, and this moral compass will build our moral compass will build our brand reputation. If you are going in different direction at different points with regards to some of your products where you are fair and you're playing fairly with the product, but in some products you're cutting corners and making the product look good, but in reality it does not deliver on the promise that you have dished out in your advertisement and your media promotions. And if you feel that those information will not be coming out into the public, then I think you're wrong, because what you're doing is you're almost putting a knife through your heart. You really don't know whether the knife is going to totally, destroy you, whether it's going to kill you or not. You're thinking that if nobody is looking, then you will gain an extra profit because of low quality input that you are putting into your products and services. Whereas on some products you have a good reputation, and you will move with the reputation of the other products. And in this set of products which people will not pay much attention, and then you will make a killing profit out of it. These are irresponsible behavior, and ultimately you are stepping on your values. You are destroying your brand reputation. Ultimately, when the information hits the press, you will not have any recourse to any logical recourse to answer back as to why you did what you did. You will have to feign ignorance sometimes, and it will not work because people are not stupid. The media is not stupid. They will take you for lunch, and they will expose you, and your reputation will go down. Some of you may even lose your jobs, and may even go into bars. And we have seen people uh, trying to extract additional profit, going down these lines and ultimately getting caught. So you can't be thinking without the true north set in the back of at the back of your mind. So the moral compass has to be clearly signaling the north, and when your direction is set to your true north, then things will operate more efficiently. You will be much more principled, and your products and services are going to be following the standards that you have been conveying out into the market. So you have to ask yourself, is your product needed for the society? You don't want to come up with products which are inconsequential, has no value to society, and it's going to add to the negative footprints in society. You don't want to do that. You want products which add some value to society. Then you have to ask yourself, am I offering a sturdy product? Am I offering a product for its value? In other words, if you're selling something, you need to know that whether the product is going to operate for at least a few years, given its the standard of the product, or if it's a product which is not, which is very very simple in terms of cost, then obviously the customer probably understands that it's not going to last for many years. So at least it should last a reasonable timeline, so that the value for money is received by the customer. So you have to ask yourself, what is your product's pricing, whether it's a sturdy product with the which the customer is going to be happy with. That's very important. Am I responsibly pricing it? Sometimes we notice that a new idea or a new product or new uh, something comes out into the market, of which people really don't know, and then they do a pricing which is extremely not in line with the fair value pricing. Uh, when you come up with a new product, it is understood that you will have a higher price than when the product is a mundane product and everybody knows about the product. That we know. But what is a fair value pricing? And that point has to be also understood. If you are pricing it 20 times its cost, is it fair? Maybe it is, maybe not. So in terms of pharmaceutical products, we know that when you come up with a new product, a new drug, you price it at a fairly steep price in order to reap all the benefits that you have plowed into your R&D over the years. That is understood. But even at that point, you have to ask yourself, if the product is a life-saving product, how far of a profit you should take, and whether this product should be given for free or a very discounted prices to the very poor people of society. Those are moral questions, and you have to keep your moral compass lined to the true north. And if your moral compass is lined up to the true north, then sometimes you have to also have these products valued at a very discounted price, because it's going to save some people's life, specifically the poor people who cannot afford these products. So you, being a responsible citizen and being a responsible leader, you need to value these issues and then move forward. And these are intricately connected with the reputation that you want to share about your product and services and about you into the market. And please note that your personal reputation is also connected with the reputation of your organization and your brand. So if you are selling a brand which has been found to be a very respectable brand in terms of your quality, then people will respond positively with you as well. You're connected to that particular brand, so your value will be elevated, and vice versa. If you are selling a particular brand and that brand has been found to be extremely negative, and the negative consequences were actually hidden, and then your reputation will fall immediately, precipitously, with regards to your brand. So this goes in sync. So good product and you as a leader both will be elevated, and a bad product and you as a leader, both products brand will fall, brand value will fall tremendously. So you have to be always keeping that mindset at the back of your head. And in order to do that, you also have to ensure what is your communication into the market in terms of product positioning, advertisement, all types of communication. Is it something fair? Are you selling the truth, or are you selling stories which cannot be supported with any evidence which is connected with your product. So these are so vital issues, and as leader, these are totally connected with our ethical standards. And having these standards, we actually build the brand reputation. And by building the brand reputation, we are actually building our personal reputation as leaders. So they go very much hand in hand. And we have to be paying extreme caution and attention to how our products and services are doing in the market, and what we are selling. Are we selling the right product with the right attributes that we are communicating to the market? Must be uh, fairly understood and fairly conveyed. Moving to the next slide. We have discussed this with regards to the brand, and I'll just quickly go through it. It's slide says blossoming your leadership. Blossoming, ensuring that it flowers. Your leadership, due to your great standards and values and moral compass, your leadership will blossom into a wonderful flower. Uh, It'll be a magnificent life ahead of you if you are a true leader following the standards. So you have to be judging yourself on a regular basis, and you'll be always following an ethical standard, and the ethical judgment has to be at the back of your mind, and you'll be wearing that hat of responsibility all the time. You'll be also communicating values and principles all the time to your team members. So they are principled. They follow some certain standards. They are following the code of ethics that you as a leader are following, and you are propagating this vision, propagating this value system into your audience, your stakeholders. You're always out there sticking out for fairness and justice. And in terms of your products and services, you're not telling anything which your product and services are not going to deliver. You create a customer centric mindset. Obviously, if you are valuing your customers tremendously, then obviously you are not going to be pushing them products and services which are not good. You're going to give them a product which is going to deliver some kind of potential and positive output for that person. So it's going to reap some benefit to them. So if you wear that hat of responsibility and be customer friendly, then you are actually blossoming your career, blossoming your leadership positioning. You have to be empathetic. We have talked about empathy in great detail in my other presentation. So empathetically, you have to be always there, and you to champion the spirit. You have to be focusing on your true north. We have just talked about internal and external trust. By championing with your principles and connecting with your true north, what is just and fair, you are building internal and external trust. Your internal people will also feel confident as to operate effectively and efficiently, because they will operate their life based on the principle of justice and fairness. So based on truth and trust, they will move from being an averagely efficient professional to being an extraordinarily efficient person, because they will feel the vibe. They will have more energy, and with more energy and more strength, anybody and everybody will do better. So that's very important. And you will always be communicating this principle and values throughout the system, throughout your operations, all the time. So when you are doing all of that, you have actually blossomed your career. You have actually blossomed yourself as to a true leader. And when you are in that kind of standard, in that kind of level, people will trust you, people will engage with you, people will resonate with you. And very importantly, uh, things will be so much easier for you to operate, because you don't have to sell your ideas too much, because people have already developed a trust with you. So any new thing that you bring onto the table, it will be a soft sell for you. It will not be a hard sell for you. But you have to be always careful. You cannot take this strength that you have accumulated over the years and miscue it. You cannot start slipping on your commitment. And if you do that, then all these years of trust will evaporate and you will be going back to your original, you will actually fall even further down than your original self. And at times you will realize at a given point that there is no turning back and you have lost your reputation, and you have lost your hope as a leader. So you don't want to be in that type of position. So in this presentation, I would emphasize tremendously on the issue of being fair, on the issue of being truthful, and the issue of being following a disciplined code of ethics throughout your career. And through that, you will actually evolve as a true leader. And I think with that, oh no, I have one more slide. And we had talked about this in our previous slides on ethics. So we know the definition from previously, but I'll just talk about ethics from the context of the managerial context. And what is ethics? It is based on the foundation of fairness, and it involves in systematizing, defending, and recommending concept of right and wrong. So you're always defending what is right. You're always constructing uh, what is the fairness, what is fair, and you are systematizing a system within your organization where you are bringing in these values and making sure the values are based on what is fair and what is just, and avoiding everything that is wrong. So that is the idea of ethics, and compliance is very much connected to ethics. Compliance is actually a regulatory issues. You are complying with certain specification, policy, and standards or law. And when we talk about these specifications, we are talking about specification based on value system, based on principles, based on ethical standards. So a regulatory compliance is needed by all leaders. Regulatory compliance describes the goal that organizations aspire in their efforts to ensure that they are aware of and take steps to comply with relevant laws, policies, and regulation. So what it boils down to is we have to follow certain laws that are connected with your country law, and the laws that you set for yourself, and the policies that you set for yourself, and also the regulations, the standards, the mandates of the country that you must be following. For example, being in a very important position of the government, you have to follow certain policy of not going into business yourself indirectly. You have to be avoiding the business. You might have a business that you can operate, but you will not operate, and you should disassociate yourself from the business for the period in which you are the positioning as the head of a certain government organ. You can't be going into that. And you know that in the United States and the rest of the world, when you take the oath of a important position as a judge or as any other important position, you move out of your business for that period, and then you after your retirement from that position, you come back. So these are regulatory compliances. So as a leader, you have to follow these. And when you don't follow these, uh, the 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 stakeholders who have appointed you, they should get rid of you because you don't have the moral compass. You don't have the moral turpitude. Your moral turpitude is waning, and people will not be following you to the letter. A major enterprise will be affected because people will feel that you are a cheat, and I can't be following a cheat as my leader. So these are important issues, and therefore it's best for you to actually step down from those positions, because otherwise you're hurting your organization, you're hurting that organ, maybe you're hurting a state organ as well. So you have to be very careful. So at the end, what it says, good leaders focus on marrying ethics with compliance at all times, and that's absolute a truth at any given point anywhere in the world. You have to marry your ethics with compliance at all times, and then only we can call you a good leader, a true leader. Moving to my last question. Normally I end with a $1 million question, and This is the million dollar question. Do you need to compromise on business growth if you are strongly adhering to high ethical standards? Absolutely not. You don't need to compromise on your business goals. Some people might say that in certain countries, doing business requires bribing a certain officer in order to get that business because the system has been designed in such a way that a large majority of people are getting bribes and giving bribes, and that's how the system operates. That's not fair. That's a bad practice. But you can choose not to bribe your organization, any organization, to promote your product. You can tell the organization that, look, our products are much superior to any product out there, and if you don't want to take my product, it is you who are going to suffer. If you want to gain individual benefit, then it's up to you. But we are not going to offer you any benefit individually. We are going to offer the benefit to all your stakeholders by offering a very good price to you. When you are bribing someone, obviously you want to add that cost with your product. So the cost goes up. So ultimately, who pays for it? All the customers of that organization. You are passing the additional pricing to the customers. So ultimately, the cost goes up. So I would suggest that if you are constantly being fair in your product, the companies who are out there, the people who are thinking of buying your product, if they want to buy great products, they will have to buy your product without any additional kickback. So that's how the reputation of your company will actually go through the roof. And then ultimately, regardless of whether you are offering any additional, bribe money or additional kickback, negative uh, benefit to any of the employees, if you don't give it to them, still your product will sell. So it's a matter of time. You have to hold on to your principle. You have to bite the bullet. You have to have the grit and the tenacity to really push your product without offering the bribe money to anyone or any kickback to anyone. Ultimately, your product will stand tall amongst all the product, and everybody will know that here is a good company, and we need to work through this good company. So I would say you don't need to at all um, let go or compromise on your ethical standards in order to run a good organization. And ultimately, I think when you are very, very stern in these areas, your product quality will also reflect those, and people will buy your products at a higher price than anybody else's product. So, with that, I end my presentation on leadership and ethics revisited, and I return back to Edward Provirmondo. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Advocate Jio Rahman, for your wonderful presentations. And those who are watching with us, we have discussed leadership and ethics revisited. We have also had other sessions earlier on leadership and ethical leadership, but we're very happy today we got more into the details about leadership and ethics. So with that, I conclude this session, and we invite you to attend our next session in the coming Wednesday at the same time. As you know, that is Mountain Standard Time is 9 p.m. and Eastern Standard Time is 11 p.m. and BST Bangladesh Standard Time is 10 a.m. on Thursday morning, and Indian Standard Time on Thursday morning at 9:30 a.m. With that, thank you very much, and I welcome you to attend our leadership speaker series. And if you have any question, you can communicate with us through our email and with social media accounts. Thank you. Uh, প্রেরণা টেলিভিশন কানাডার পক্ষ থেকে আপনাদের স্বাগতম জানাচ্ছি এবং গ্লোবাল একাডেমি অফ হোলিস্টিক লিডারশিপ অ্যান্ড কোচিং এর পক্ষ থেকেও আপনাদেরকে স্বাগতম জানাচ্ছি। আজকে আমাদের লিডারশিপ স্পিকার সিরিজের ৩২তম পর্ব আমাদের হলো, এবং আমরা খুব আনন্দিত। অ্যাডভোকেট জিয়াউর রহমান খুব সুন্দরভাবে আমাদের লিডারশিপ অ্যান্ড ইথিক্স রিভিজিটেড, আমরা এর আগেও লিডারশিপ এবং ইথিক্সের সেশনটা আমরা আগে করেছি, এবং আমরা আজকে খুব ডিটেলস ইথিক্স এবং লিডারশিপের বিষয়ে আলোচনা করেছি। আজকে আমরা জানি যে বর্তমানে আমাদের যে বৈশ্বিক অবস্থা, তার পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে আমাদের নেতৃত্ব এবং এই ইথিক্স বা এই নীতি বিষয়গুলো আমাদের আসলে খুবই জরুরি, এবং আমাদের এই বর্তমানে প্যান্ডেমিকের জন্য আমাদের অনেক ধরনের চ্যালেঞ্জ রয়েছে। এবং আমরা জানি, এবং প্রত্যেক রাষ্ট্রে এবং প্রত্যেক আম, সংগঠনের মধ্যে লিডারশিপের একটা বিরাট ভূমিকা রয়েছে, এবং ইথিক্যাল লিডারশিপের এখানে বিরাট ভূমিকা রয়েছে। আজকে আমরা আপনাদের সাথে ইথিক্যাল লিডারশিপের যে বিষয়গুলো আলোচনা করেছি, তো সামারি করে যদি আমরা বলতে চাই, যে আমরা সাধারণত আমাদের সেশন শুরু করে থেকে একটা কোটেশন দিয়ে, সেখানে আমাদের লিন্ডা ফিশার থর্টন নামে যে ভদ্রমহিলা, ওনার যে কোটেশনটা রয়েছে, যে এখানে যে পজিটিভ যে লিডার যারা রয়েছে, যে তারা তাদের ইথিক্যাল ভ্যালু তারা কিন্তু থাকে, এবং আম, এটা বলা আছে যাদের মধ্যে হিউম্যান গ্রোথ মাইন্ডসেট থাকে, এবং দে আর ফিক্সড ফ্লেক্সিবল এট দ্য সেম টাইম, এবং তারা সবসময় কিন্তু গ্রহণ করে। আমরা জানি যে আমরা অর্গানাইজেশনে কাজ করলে অনেকেই থাকে, আমরা অনেক টিম মেম্বারদের সাথে কাজ করি, সো হ্যাভ টু বি ফ্লেক্সিবল। এবং বাট এখানে আরেকটা কথা বলেছে, দে নেভার স্ট্রেইং ফ্রম ইথিক্স বাট অলওয়েজ উইলিং টু চেঞ্জ উইথ টাইমস। সবসময় কিন্তু তারা প্রস্তুত পরিবর্তন করতে, কিন্তু ইথিক্সটাকে কিন্তু সঙ্গে নিয়ে, যে ইথিক্সের যে ইথিক্যাল যে ভ্যালু, মোরাল যে ভ্যালু, সেটা নিয়ে, সেটা সঙ্গে নিয়ে। আরেকটা যে কোটেশন দেওয়া আছে, আমরা জানি ওয়ান অফ দোজ মাল্টি বিলিয়নিয়ার জ্যাক মা, চাইনিজ যে একজন এন্টারপ্রেনার, এবং ওনার যে একটা কোটেশন রয়েছে, যে নেভার ডিসিভ আদার্স, মানে অন্যকে কাউকে প্রতারণা করো না, বিজনেসের ক্ষেত্রে হোক, জীবনের ক্ষেত্রে হোক। ওনার একটা উদাহরণ যেটা বলা আছে, 1995 সালে উনি 4টা কোম্পানি দ্বারা উনি প্রতারিত হয়েছিলেন। আজকে সেই কোম্পানিগুলো আজকে নেই, তারা সবই ক্লোজ হয়ে গেছে, এবং কোনো কোম্পানি কিন্তু বেশি দূর যেতে পারে না তারা যদি প্রতারণা করে। তো আর একটা আজিম প্রেম, যে আমরা জানি যে ভারতীয় বা ইন্ডিয়ান যে একজন বিশাল আম, উদ্যোক্তা বা এন্টারপ্রেনার, এবং মাল্টিমিলিয়নিয়ার, ওনার একটা কোটেশন এখানে বলা আছে, যে আজকে আমাদের যে রিয়েল থ্রেট, মানে আমাদের সত্যিকারের যে আমাদের যে আমাদের যে আশঙ্কা বা আমাদের যে থ্রেট রয়েছে বিজনেসের মধ্যে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে পোর এথিক্যাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ডস এবং ল্যাক অফ ইন্টিগ্রিটি। মানে আমাদের মধ্যে পোর যে এথিক্যাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ড যদি আমাদের থাকে, এবং ইন্টিগ্রিটির যে অভাব, এবং এটা কিন্তু অনেক ধরনের ক্ষতি করে। এবং মানে ইতিহাসে এটাই বলে যে যে বিজনেস ইথিক্স বলে যে শেয়ার্ড ভ্যালু, কর্পোরেট গভর্নেন্স আমাদের একটা অর্গানাইজেশনকে বহুত দূর বা সামনে এগিয়ে নিতে সহায়তা করে। সুতরাং এটা বিশেষ গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আজিম প্রেমজি তার কথার মাধ্যমে খুব সুন্দরভাবে বিষয়টা বলেছেন। এরপরে যে বিষয়টা হচ্ছে যে উনি আরেকটা কথা আছে এখানে, যে লিডারশিপের সম্পর্কে বলা আছে, যে লিডারশিপটা কি, অ্যাবিলিটি টু মুভ উইথ ইথিক্যাল ভ্যালুজ। তার মানে আমরা যখন লিডারশিপ বা নেতৃত্ব স্থানে থাকি, আমাদের ইথিক্যাল ভ্যালু বা যে আমাদের নৈতিক যে মূল্যবোধ, সেটা নিয়ে আমরা থাকি। এবং আমরা জানি যে এর মধ্যে দিয়ে আমাদের অনেক ধরনের প্রতিকূলতা আহ, আহ, থাকে, কিন্তু আমরা ইথিক্যাল ভ্যালু নিয়ে আমরা যখন কাজ করি, হয়তো কেউ আমাদের দেখছে না, কিন্তু আমরা যদি ঠিক মতো করি, সেটাই কিন্তু প্রকৃত লিডারশিপ বা নেতৃত্ব। সুতরাং এখানে কার্ড কর্নার অনেক অনেক উপায় আছে, যেখানে আমাদের হয়তো বা এড়িয়ে যাওয়ার বা মানে অনেক সুযোগ রয়েছে, কিন্তু সেটা না করে আমাদের যদি ইথিক্যাল ভ্যালুটা যদি আমরা রাখি, তাহলে আমরা অনেক দূর আগে যেতে পারি। এরপরে আমাদের লিডারশিপ ডিসিপ্লিন এন্ড ভ্যালু সম্পর্কে বলা হচ্ছে, নেতৃত্ব এবং সে যে ডিসিপ্লিন এবং ভ্যালু মূল্যবোধ সম্পর্কে বলা আছে, যে কিভাবে আমরা এটা আমাদের আমাদের জীবনে বা আমাদের অর্গানাইজেশনে আমরা নিতে পারি। এবং সেটা হচ্ছে এমবেডিং ডিসিপ্লিন, যে আমাদের হচ্ছে যে ডিসিপ্লিন যদি আমরা করি, তাহলে বা আমাদের মধ্যে যদি সেই নিয়ন্ত্রণ যদি থাকে, তাহলে কিন্তু আমাদের নেতৃত্বে আমাদের সুবিধা হয়। এথিক্স ব্র্যান্ডিং বেসড অন ভ্যালুস। তো এটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের ভ্যালুস মূল্যবোধই কিন্তু আমাদের যে ব্র্যান্ডিং বা এথিক্যাল যে ব্র্যান্ডিং, সেটা করতে সহায়তা করে। এবং প্রমোট ফেয়ারনেস। ফেয়ারনেসটা যে আমাদের রয়েছে, যে আমরা যে ফেয়ার বা আমরা যে স্বচ্ছ, সেটা আমাদেরকে প্রমোট করে। এবং প্রমোটিং কালচার অফ অর্গানাইজেশন রেসপন্সিবিলিটি, আমাদের যে অর্গানাইজেশন যে দায়িত্ববোধ রয়েছে, সেটাও কিন্তু কালচারটা কিন্তু আমাদের প্রমোট করে। এবং লিড বাই এক্সাম্পল, আমরা যখন এটা করি, নেতা যখন এটা করে, তখন এটা লিড বাই এক্সাম্পলের মাধ্যমে হয় এবং অন্যরাও কিন্তু দেখে এটা শেখে। এরপরে যেটা রয়েছে যে ইথিক্স এবং ব্র্যান্ড রেপুটেশন। ইথিকে এবং ব্র্যান্ড রেপুটেশনের কি ভূমিকা রয়েছে? আমরা জানি যে ইথিক্স এবং ব্র্যান্ড রেপুটেশন যেটা রয়েছে, যে ড্রাইভিং বিজনেস থ্রু মোরাল কম্পাস, যে কিভাবে আমরা আমাদের বিজনেসটাকে বা আমাদের ব্যবসাটাকে আমাদের যে নৈতিক মূল্যবোধ দ্বারা আমরা পরিচালিত করতে পারি। এই প্রোডাক্টটি আসলে আমাদের এই সমাজের জন্য বা আমাদের এই জাতির জন্য দরকার রয়েছে কিনা, আমি কি আমার যে প্রোডাক্টটা আমি করছি সেটা কি একটা সলিড প্রোডাক্ট কিনা, স্টাডি প্রোডাক্ট কিনা, এবং আমি কি যে এই প্রাইসটা যে সিলেক্ট করেছি, সেই সিলেক্টটা কি আমি সঠিকভাবে বা দায়িত্ব বোধ হিসেবে আমি করেছি কিনা, এবং আমার যে অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট করেছি এটা কি ফেয়ার কিনা। তো এটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। এরপরে হচ্ছে যে আমরা কিভাবে আমাদের নেতৃত্বটাকে আমরা বৃদ্ধি করতে পারি। তো এখানে আর একটা বিষয় রয়েছে যে মেইনটেনিং ইথিক্যাল জাজমেন্ট, আমাদের ইথিক্যাল যে জাজমেন্ট রয়েছে, যে বিচার করার যে মধ্যে, এটা কিভাবে আমরা ধরে রাখতে পারি, সেইভাবে কিন্তু আমাদের নেতৃত্বটা আমরা বৃদ্ধি পেতে পারি। এবং আরেকটা ব্যাপার হচ্ছে যে আমাদের এখানে কমিউনিকেট ভ্যালুজ অ্যান্ড প্রিন্সিপাল, তার মানে আমাদের ভ্যালু বা আমাদের যে মূল্যবোধ এবং যে প্রিন্সিপাল, এটা কিন্তু আমাদের অন্য অন্য যে টিম মেম্বার আছে তাদের সাথে কিন্তু কমিউনিকেট করতে হবে। এবং কাস্টমার সেন্ট্রিক মাইন্ডসেট মানে হচ্ছে যে কাস্টমারের মতো, কাস্টমারকে সামনে নিয়ে বা কাস্টমারের দিকেই সেই ধরনের চিন্তাধারা আমাদের থাকতে হবে। সো এমপ্যাথি, এমপ্যাথি আমাদের থাকতে হবে, মানে তার মতো করে চিন্তা করা। এবং আরেকটা ব্যাপার হচ্ছে যে ফোকাস অন ট্রু নর্থ, বিল্ড ইন্টারনাল এক্সটার্নাল ট্রাস্ট, তার মানে আমাদের অর্গানাইজেশনের মধ্যে অথবা অর্গানাইজেশনের বাইরে আমাদের যে বিশ্বাস বা আস্থা আমাদের রাখতে হবে। যেমন কমিউনিকেট ভ্যালুজ অ্যান্ড প্রিন্সিপাল, আমরা কিভাবে আমাদের এই যে ভ্যালুজ এবং প্রিন্সিপাল বা আমাদের যে মূল্যবোধ, এটা কিভাবে আমরা কমিউনিকেট করতে পারি বা আমরা আমাদের যে টিম মেম্বার আছে তাদের সাথে আমরা সহবাগ করতে পারি। এখন ইথিক্স এন্ড কমপ্লায়েন্স যেটা রয়েছে, যে ইথিক্স এন্ড কমপ্লায়েন্স বলতে যেটা বোঝাচ্ছে যে ইথিক্স যেটা বলছে যে নীতি এবং কিছু ভ্যালু, যেটা আসলে একটা অর্গানাইজেশনের খুব গোড়া থেকে খুব শক্তভাবে এটা থাকে, তার ফলে কি হয়, এটা স্বচ্ছতা থাকে। এটা এমন এক ধরনের দর্শন যার মধ্যে যে সিস্টেম্যাটিজম, সিস্টেমে থাকে ডিফেন্ডিং অ্যান্ড রেকমেন্ডিং কনসেপ্ট রাইট আর রং বিহেভিয়ার, মানে কোনটা ভালো এবং কোনটা মন্দ সে ব্যবহার, সেটাকে কিন্তু এটা কিন্তু ব্যাখ্যা করে। আর কমপ্লায়েন্স বলতে যেটা বোঝাচ্ছে যে এই যে আমার রুল বা যে নীতিমালা রয়েছে, সেটাকে আমি ঠিক মতো এটা মান্য করছি কিনা বা ঠিক মতো আমি কি এটাকে ফলো করছি কিনা, এটা পলিসি, স্ট্যান্ডার্ড, ল। এবং রেগুলেটরি কমপ্লায়েন্স হচ্ছে যে আমার একটা গোল থাকা উচিত, যেটা আমার অর্গানাইজেশন এটা থাকতে পারে, যে আমি যে বিষয়গুলো আমার যে ল রয়েছে বা রেলিভেন্ট ল রয়েছে, পলিসি রয়েছে, রেগুলেশন রয়েছে, এটা সম্পর্কে আমাদের সচেতনতা থাকা এবং সেই অনুযায়ী আমাদেরকে কমপ্লাই করা, মানে আমাদের মেনে চলা, এবং শুধু মেনেই চলা না, অন্যদেরকেও অনুপ্রাণিত করা, আমাদের যে টিম মেম্বার রয়েছে তাদেরকেও অনুপ্রাণিত করা। তো গুড লিডার যারা রয়েছে, যারা ভালো লিডার রয়েছে, তারা কি করে, তারা মেরিং ইথিক্স এন্ড উইথ কমপ্লায়েন্স এট অল টাইম, তার মানে সবসময় তাদের মধ্যে এই ইথিক্স বা যে নীতিমালা, মূল্যবোধ এবং কমপ্লায়েন্স, এই কমপ্লায়েন্সের এটা সবসময় তাদের মধ্যে এটা থাকে। এবং তার ফলেই তারা একজন কৃতকার্য বা একটা সাকসেসফুল তারা লিডার হতে পারে। আমরা সাধারণত আমাদের সেশন শেষ করে থাকি একটা $1,000,000 কোশ্চেন দিয়ে। এখানে বলা আছে কি, ডু ইউ নিড টু কম্প্রোমাইজ, আমরা কি কম্প্রোমাইজ করব, বা আমরা কি বিজনেস গ্রোথ, আমরা যদি হাই ইথিক্যাল আমরা যদি রাখতে চাই, তাহলে কি আমাদের বিজনেস গ্রোথটা কি আমার বাধাগ্রস্ত হবে কিনা, এক্ষেত্রে কি আমরা বিজনেস গ্রোথ করার জন্য কি আমরা বিজনেসের বৃদ্ধি করার জন্য কি আমরা এখানে কম্প্রোমাইজ করব কিনা, বা আমাদের এখানে নীতিমালার সাথে আমরা কোনো মানে আমার নীতিমালা পরিবর্তন করবো কিনা। তো ডেফিনেটলি
আপোষ করব কিনা,
আপোষ
আপোষ।
আপোষ করবো কিনা, তো আপোষ করা, কম্প্রোমাইজ করা, তো এটা ডেফিনেটলি নট, আমরা তো কখনোই আমরা এটা কম্প্রোমাইজ করা বা আপোষ আমরা করতে পারবো না, করা উচিত না। এবং যদি আমরা করি তাহলে আমাদের নেতৃত্বের যে মানদণ্ড বা যে ইথিক্যাল যে স্ট্যান্ডার্ড, সেটাকে আমরা অঙ্গ করছি, এবং কেউ আমাকে ফলোয়ার্স মানে আমার সাথে যারা কাজ করছে তাও আমাকে তারা সে ফলো করবে না, উইল লুজ আওয়ার ক্রেডিবিলিটি, এবং আমাদের ক্রেডিবিলিটি লুজ করলে উইল নট বি সাকসেসফুল। আমাদের বিজনেসে, আমাদের ব্যক্তিগত জীবন এবং বিজনেসে যদি আমরা আমাদের ক্রেডিবিলিটি, আমাদের ট্রাস্ট ওয়ার্দিনেস যদি আমরা লুজ করি, তাহলে ডেফিনেটলি আমরা সাকসেসফুল হতে পারছি না। সুতরাং উইথ দ্যাট আমি আরো কয়েকটা বিষয় আপনাদের সাথে শেয়ার করতে যাচ্ছি।
আমাদের বিশ্বাসযোগ্যতা, প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক বিশ্বাসযোগ্যতা।
প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক বিশ্বাসযোগ্যতা। তো আমি আর কয়েকটা বিষয় আপনাদের সাথে শেয়ার করতে যাচ্ছি যে 1900 রস নামে এক ভদ্রলোক 1930 সালে তিনি এটা বলছেন যে যে ইথিক্সের যে বিষয়টা, যে ইথিক্সটা হচ্ছে যে দ্যাট মেক্স রাইট অ্যাক্টস রাইট, তার মানে সঠিক বিষয় যেটা করা। আরেকটা যে মানে বলা আছে ইথিক্সটা আসলে কি, it is a systematic approach through which reason to make sense of our individual and social moral experience in such a way to determine the rule which were to govern human conduct and values with pursuing in life. সো এই যে আমরা আজকে ইথিক্সটা সম্পর্কে পড়লাম, সেটা এমনভাবে আমাদেরকে পরিচালিত করে যে হিউম্যান কন্ডাক্ট বা ভ্যালুস, যে এটা আমাদের জীবনটা আসলে কি সার্থক কিনা, আমাদের এটাকে আমরা আমরা বুঝতে পারি। এবং এর শুধু এখানে জীবনের সার্থক না, আমরা জানি এখানে বিজনেসের কথা বলছি, বিজনেসও আমরা তখন আমাদের সার্থকতা খুঁজে পাবো। উইল ফিল দ্য সেন্স অফ অ্যাকমপ্লিশমেন্ট, বা আমাদের মধ্যে সেন্স অফ আমাদের এই বিষয়টা আমাদের থাকবে। সুতরাং ইথিক্সের ইথিক্সের এই বিষয়গুলা থেকে আমি আরেকটা বিষয় একটু মানে শেষ করতে চাই। সেটা হচ্ছে যে ইথিক্সে যেটা আমি আমি এখানে বলতে চাই যে এখানে লিডারশিপ এন্ড ইথিক্স বলছে, বাট আমি এটাকে বলবো যে ইথিক্যাল স্টিওয়ারশিপ। ইথিক্যাল স্টিওয়ারশিপটা যদি আমরা করি, তাহলে কতগুলো বিষয় আহ, আমাদেরকে সামনে মাথায় রাখতে হবে, যে আমরা কিভাবে এই যে ইথিক্যাল বা মোরাল ভ্যালুটাকে আমরা ধরে রাখতে পারি। সো এর মধ্যে কতগুলা বিষয় রয়েছে যেটা আমাদেরকে সচেতনতা থাকা দরকার। যেমন এটা হচ্ছে আমাদের মধ্যে যে রেজিলিয়েন্স, আমাদের মধ্যে যে সচেতনতা, বা আমাদের মধ্যে যে এটা কিন্তু বৃদ্ধি করায়, যে ইথিক্যাল যে মধ্যে যে নর্মাল স্টিওয়ারশিপ, সেটার মধ্যে আমাদের বৃদ্ধি করা দরকার আছে। আর একটা হচ্ছে যে ইনক্রিজিং দ্য এবিলিটি টু অ্যাডাপ্ট অ্যান্ড ইনোভেট, তার মানে আমাদের এবিলিটি থাকতে হবে যে আমরা এটাকে আমরা গ্রহণ করা অথবা ইনোভেট করা। আরেকটা হচ্ছে যে ডিক্রিজিং নাম্বার অফ ইথিক্যাল ভায়োলেশন, তার মানে আমাদের এই বিষয়ে যে ইথিক্যাল যদি কোনো ভায়োলেশন থাকে, নৈতিক যদি ভায়োলেশন থাকে, এটা কিন্তু কমাই দেওয়া। তার মানে আমরা ইথিক্যাল মানে আমরা ইথিক্যালি সচেতন হই, ডেফিনেটলি আমরা কোনো আনইথিক্যাল প্র্যাকটিসকে আমরা এন্টারটেইন করব না। শুধু আমিই না, অর্গানাইজেশন অন্যকেও এনকারেজ করছি। সো এটা আরেকটা বিষয়। আরেকটা বিষয় হচ্ছে যে রিক্রুটিং এন্ড রিটেনিং পিপল হুজ ভ্যালুজ আর কংগ্রুয়েন্ট উইথ দোজ অফ দ্য অর্গানাইজেশন। তার মানে আমি যদি হাই ইথিক্যাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ড হই, যখন আমি রিক্রুটমেন্ট করছি, ইন্টারভিউ নিচ্ছি, যারা এই ধরনের ইথিক্সের বা এই ধরনের বা ইথিক্যাল হাই ইথিক্যাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ড মেনটেন করে, তাদেরকে রিক্রুটমেন্ট করছি, রিটেন করছি। তার মধ্যে কি হচ্ছে, উই আর গেটিং স্ট্রঙ্গার, উই আর গেটিং মোর স্ট্রঙ্গার। আমরা এখানে কংগ্রুয়েন্ট মানে আমাদের ভ্যালুসটা, আমাদের ইথিক্যাল পিপলস, দে আর মেকিং এ গুড অর্গানাইজেশন। আরেকটা বিষয় যেটা হচ্ছে যে ডেভেলপিং প্রসেস এন্ড অ্যাপ্রোচেস দ্যাট সাপোর্ট এন্ড অ্যালাউ ইথিক্যাল স্টুয়ারশিপ টু ফ্লারিশ। আমরা এর মধ্যে দিয়ে আমাদের আরেকটা দায়িত্ববোধ রয়েছে, সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমরা ডিফারেন্ট প্রসেস এবং ডিফারেন্ট অ্যাপ্রোচও আমরা ডেভেলপ করবো, তার ফলে এই ইথিক্যাল স্টিওয়ারশিপটা কিন্তু আমাদের অর্গানাইজেশনে বাড়তে পারে। তো ইট ইজ ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট যে আমাদের মধ্যে এই সচেতনতা বোধ এবং এই দায়িত্ববোধ আমাদের মধ্যে থাকতে হবে। আর একটা বিষয় হচ্ছে ইনক্রিজ আওয়ার এবিলিটি টু মিট স্টেক হোল্ডার এক্সপেকটেশন। তার মানে আমাদের যে আমরা কিভাবে স্টেক হোল্ডারদের যে আরো যে চাহিদা রয়েছে, বা তখন এটা আমাদের কিন্তু আমরা কিন্তু আরো আমাদের ইনক্রিজ হয়ে যায়, এবং আমরা আমরা তখন কিন্তু স্টেক হোল্ডারদের এক্সপেকটেশনটা আমরা বুঝতে পারি এবং ফুলফিল আওয়ার প্রমিস অফ বিং সোশ্যালি রেসপন্সিবল। এবং এর ফলে আমরা কিন্তু আমাদের যে সোশ্যালি বা সামাজিক যে দায়িত্ববোধ, সেই দায়িত্ববোধ আমরা কিন্তু এটা কিন্তু তাদের প্রত্যাশাটাকে পূরণ করতে পারি। আমরা যখন প্রত্যাশাকে পূরণ করতে পারি, আমার অর্গানাইজেশন উইল বি লং, মানে এটা হচ্ছে দীর্ঘদিন আমাদের থেকে। আমরা জানি যে অনেক এক্সাম্পল রয়েছে যেখানে অর্গানাইজেশন ইজ নট লং, মানে লাস্টিং লং, বিকজ দে ডোন্ট হ্যাভ হাই ইথিক্যাল স্ট্যান্ডার্ড, দে ডোন্ট ফলো সাম নর্মস আর স্ট্যান্ডার্ডস হুইচ ইজ নট গুড, এবং এটা করে না। সুতরাং উইথ দ্যাট আমি আজকে আমাদের সেশনটা এখানে আমাদের সমাপ্তি করছি, এবং আপনাদেরকে আগামী সেশন আমাদের প্রত্যেক বুধবারে আমরা জানি মাউন্টেন স্ট্যান্ডার্ড টাইম, এডমন্টন ক্যালগারি আমাদের এখানে রাত 9টার সময়, এবং টরন্টো অটোয়া কানাডা এখানে রাত 11টা ইস্টার্ন স্ট্যান্ডার্ড টাইম, এবং বাংলাদেশ টাইম বৃহস্পতিবার সকাল 10টা, এবং ইন্ডিয়ান স্ট্যান্ডার্ড টাইম বৃহস্পতিবার সকাল 9:30। আমাদের আজকে 32তম পর্ব হলো। আপনাদের আহ্বান করছি আপনারা আমাদের সেশনে জয়েন করুন, এবং আপনাদের যদি কোনো কোয়েশ্চেন থাকে আমাদের সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া অ্যাকাউন্টের মাধ্যমে আপনারা যোগাযোগ করতে পারেন, অথবা ইমেলের মাধ্যমে আমাদের সাথে যোগাযোগ করতে পারেন। উইথ দ্যাট আপনাদেরকে সবাইকে আপনাদের সুস্বাস্থ্য কামনা করছি। আপনারা সুস্থ থাকুন, আপনারা ভালো থাকুন। ধন্যবাদ।
আমিও ঢাকা থেকে অ্যাডভোকেট জিয়া রহমান সবাইকে শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি এবং ভালো থাকবেন। এবং আপনারা আমাদের আগামী পর্বের সাথে সম্পৃক্ত হবেন। আমাদের এই সিরিজটা চলমান এবং এটার মাধ্যমে আমরা নেতৃত্ব বোধ জাগ্রত করার যেই সমস্ত টুল সেই সম্পর্কে আমরা ধারণা প্রাপ্ত হচ্ছি এবং আপনারা আপনাদের জীবন আচার এবং আপনাদের জীবনের পরিধিতে এই আমাদের এই ট্রেনিং থেকে হয়তো কিছু অংশ নিয়ে কাজে লাগালে আমাদের দেশ উপকৃত হবে, আপনি উপকৃত হবেন এবং আমরাও উপকৃত হব আপনাদের সাথে থেকে। ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে।